We're going to journey back in time, right to this dramatic collision of worlds. The moment the tiny early Christian movement ran headfirst into the full might of the Roman Empire. And look, this wasn't just some philosophical debate. No, this was a revolution that would end up reshaping the very foundations of Western civilization as we know it.
So our story really kicks off right here, on Mars Hill in Athens. You've got the Apostle Paul standing smack in the middle of the heart of Greek philosophy and religion. I mean, this is a city that was packed with something like 30,000 gods. But he spots an opening, something really interesting, an altar dedicated to an unknown god. And that one little inscription, it perfectly captures the spiritual vibe of the time. It was a world just overflowing with religion, but still searching for something more. It really sets the stage for this massive clash of ideas.
Okay, so to really get this, we have to understand the world Christianity was born into. Let's take a good look at the Roman Empire. I mean, this was a world just saturated with gods, and a culture that, and this is key, demanded absolute public loyalty.
And you have to see just how public all of this was. In the Roman Empire, your faith wasn't some private personal thing. Nope, it was a patriotic duty. Think about it, from these huge, grand public temples all the way down to the little idols in your own home. Honoring the gods, and of course the divine emperor, was just woven into the very fabric of society, business, and politics. It was everywhere.
And you've really got to understand, to the Roman mind, this was the glue holding their entire world together. The famous Pax Romana, the peace and prosperity of the empire, they believed that all depended on keeping the gods happy. So if you refused to participate, well, that wasn't just being impolite. It was seen as an act that could literally endanger the entire community. You were putting everyone at risk.
So into this world, with all its countless gods and its public religion, comes this totally new message. And it wasn't carried by armies or legions, but by preachers, fishermen, regular people. And they were proclaiming a single exclusive allegiance that was about to shake the very foundations of the empire.
And wow, the divide was just stark. The Christian message wasn't just a little bit different, it was a direct challenge to every single pillar of the Roman worldview. I mean, Rome was pluralistic. Add another god, who cares? But Christianity was exclusive. Roman religion was all public ritual, Christian worship was often done in private homes. And here's the most dangerous part. While Rome deified its emperor, Christians were declaring that Christ was the one and only true king.
Yeah. That claim of exclusivity, it was just profoundly disruptive. Think about it. In a world where you could just add another god to your collection, like the Athenians with their unknown god altar, the Christians showed up saying, nope, there's only one path, one truth, and one God. This wasn't an addition, it was a total replacement.
So you can start to see how this spirals into a massive political and social crisis, right? From the Roman point of view, these Christians looked like atheists. I mean, they denied all the proper gods, and they looked like traitors for refusing to worship the emperor. Their beliefs weren't just weird, they were seen as a direct threat to the stability and the divine favor of the entire empire. And this clash, it was pretty much inevitable. It led to some intense and often really brutal conflict. But here's the thing, the struggle wasn't just coming from the Roman authorities on the outside. There were also these deep divisions growing inside the fragile new Christian communities themselves. Well, the Roman state responded, and they responded with force. You had emperors like Nero, who famously used Christians as a scapegoat for the Great Fire of Rome. Then later, guys like Decius and Diocletian launched these systematic empire-wide persecutions. Their goal? To completely stamp out what they saw as a dangerous and disloyal cult.
And we actually have letters from officials like Pliny the Younger that give us this chilling insight into how the Romans saw it legally. The core test was simple, loyalty. They'd bring you in and say, curse Christ and worship the emperor's image. If you did, you walked free. If you refused, you were executed. That's it. Simply being a Christian was in itself a crime worthy of death. But the threat wasn't just from the outside, you see, and this is what's so fascinating. While the church was literally fighting for its survival against the Roman Empire, it was also battling these critical internal divisions, fights that threatened to tear the whole movement apart from the inside out.
When you read letters from the Apostle Paul to these young churches, it's almost like a checklist of growing pains. He's constantly warning them about splitting into factions, about false teachings that were watering down the gospel, about pride, and about the very real temptation to just give in to despair when the persecutions got bad. I mean, these were real, messy human struggles.
And we're not just talking about abstract theological debates here. No, these were practical day-to-day conflicts.
For example, in Jerusalem, you had Greek-speaking widows who were being overlooked in the daily food distribution. Over in Rome, believers were getting into these fierce arguments over what foods were okay to eat. These weren't small things. These were cultural clashes that tested the very unity of the faith.
And yet, despite all of it, the brutal persecution from the outside and the chaotic turmoil on the inside, the Christian faith didn't just survive. It ultimately transformed the entire empire. Its legacy would go on to profoundly shape Western civilization, influencing everything from how we think about charity in hospitals all the way to philosophy.
But maybe the most profound legacy of all was this completely radical new way of seeing humanity itself. You have to remember, this was a world defined by status, by power, by class. And into that world, Christianity introduced an idea that would slowly, over centuries, turn that whole hierarchy completely upside down.
Right at the heart of this was a single world-altering belief that every single person, it didn't matter if you are a man, a woman, a slave, free, Roman, or barbarian, every person is made in the imago Dei, which means the image of God. Now, in a society that legally defines some people as property and even practice leaving unwanted infants out to die, this idea that every individual has intrinsic dignity, well, it was pure dynamite.
Honestly, you can draw a direct line from this one theological belief to a fundamental re-engineering of society's entire ethical code. It's a lineage, a direct connection between that early Christian conviction and the foundational principles of human dignity that so many of us just take for granted today.
So all of this leaves us with a final thought, right? This clash between Christianity and the culture around it, it's not just ancient history. The early church grew because it didn't blend in. It offered a radical alternative. And that kind of forces us to ask the question, in our modern world, with all its new gods, self, fame, pleasure, what is that original challenge of a different allegiance, a totally different way of life? What does that truly look like for us today?